Chris Breton was born in Kenya and is a former negotiator and advisor for the European Commission in Brussels. In Dunedin this weekend, he's running workshops on sustainability, spiritual fulfilment and social justice. He joins us tonight to tell us a little bit about himself and his work. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening.
First of all, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, I was born in Kenya and I've privileged to have lived in Zambia, Hungary, the West Indies, Kenya and Gambia. And then what else have I done? I've lived, worked and travelled effectively in 95 countries, and including in the last few years cycling across Australia and through Indonesia.
Are you living in Dunedin at the moment?
Very much so, yes. Yes.
Now tell us a little bit about your work with the European Commission.
Well, imagine it was the early 1990s and I was a young Thatcherite, and the Berlin Wall had just fallen, and Gorbachev had asked us to set up a program to help transform the former communist countries to bring in democratic market economies. And I was working with with Nick Clegg, who's the UK Deputy Prime Minister. We were working together on helping to inspire these countries to learn a new way of behaving. And I was in charge of environment and privileged to get a dossier to bring the Russians and the Iranians together for the first ever agreement between those countries. And some other great projects, like I got the Georgians, the Armenians and the Azeris to sit down as governments for the first time to work together, to share know-how on the environment and to learn how to consult their civil society, something they'd never done before.
Now, you've also been leading workshops around the world. What sort of things have been going on in those workshops?
Well, I've been putting out to people how environment, social justice and spirit are profoundly related, and asking the question, where are we as a planet? Because if you look environmentally, you've got waste in the Pacific, you've got pollution to the rivers, you've got deforestation, here in New Zealand too. And secondly, we look at kind of how do we get here? How does such an intelligent species, such as ourselves, get into the situation of trashing the planet and each other? And again, there are, you can see in New Zealand, there's similar instances where 75%, I understand, of your dairy farms would have to close tomorrow if New Zealand were in the European Union. And there's more and more devastation in your rivers and in your lakes, the cadmium in your soils. So it's pretty dire straight. And I've been putting that message. But then we look at, well, okay, what's a new way of working? And drawing on, say, indigenous philosophy like kai tiakitanga, stewardship of the land, but also quantum physics, where they're now realizing that we're all connected. There's a whole new way of looking at the world. So given that, what's possible for the future and where do we go from here? And those are the kind of key questions I ask in the workshops that I've now been giving in nearly 70 in 7 countries.
So what do you hope that the workshops here in Dunedin will achieve?
I think people will see for the first time there is a connection between environment, social justice and spirit. It's really hard for people. People find it really difficult, whether they don't have much money or if they're really quite rich and materially well off. They're still finding it difficult, much more difficult than our parents, in a sense, because people are finding that material comfort doesn't bring the happiness they felt. People will see that if they can get in touch with themselves spiritually, but also recognize the impact of their purchasing decisions in the world outside in terms of the cost on the planet, cost elsewhere in New Zealand, they can see for the first time a linkage between environment, social justice and spirit, and walk away with a sense of hope and optimism rather than cynicism and frustration.
Chris Breton, thanks very much for your time.